the Hip Hop Scholar Podcast. I am Melanie, the Hip Hop Scholar. This is where beats meet scholarship, where the culture becomes curriculum, and where the truest rhymes are dedicated to truth itself. Because here, we don't just listen to the music. We interrogate its meaning, trace its lineage, and honor the architects who turned their pain into poetry. Now, there are places where music isn't just played, it's breathed, where sound is sacred and survival becomes a song. And no place embodies that truth quite like New Orleans, a city where struggle and spirit dance in the same rhythm. From the cracked sidewalks of Uptown to the glowing lights of the West Bank, the rhythm of this city has always spoken a language of pain, promise, and persistence. Within that soundscape, forged by brass, baptized in rain, and carried by generations, stands a voice that refuses to fade. Kevin Cooks. Born of the Crescent City, molded by its chaos, lifted by its creativity. He is the product of a city that raised warriors disguised as poets. He's walked through storms most never saw coming and turned every drop of rain into rhythm. In K. Cook's world, every verse is a confession, every hook is a healing, and every beat is a battlefield. When he dropped Nobody Listened the Beginning, he wasn't chasing ears. He was reclaiming silence. Because before the applause, before the algorithms, before the numbers and the noise, there was truth. And Kevin cooked that truth until it spoke for itself. Then came That's My Chick and So Addicted, records that showed his duality, love and loyalty, passion and pain, storytelling from a man who's learned that vulnerability and vision can live inside the same verse. But he didn't stop there. Art in reality is timeless, became something bigger, a statement, a scripture, a soundtrack for creators who refuse to expire. It asks, what happens when art outlives the artist? And Kevin's answer is simple. You make sure it does. You make sure every word, every breath, every scar, and every triumph becomes a seed of courage for the next generation. Kevin Cook collaborated with homegrown producers, built community through creativity, and carried the sonic DNA of his city like a birthright. His bars moved like second lines, joyful even when they hurt, free even when they ache. He writes from the marrow, painting portraits that speak to fathers and sons, to those chasing peace in chaos, to dreamers who know that greatness isn't given, it's earned. And tonight, this moment right here, it's not just another interview. This is testimony meeting tempo, grit meeting grace, the scholar and the street philosopher face to face. So turn your speakers up and let the city breathe through your headphones, because this is more than a conversation, it's communion. It's the sound of a man who refused to let silence have the last word. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners and learners, dreamers and doers, this is Kevin Cooks, the embodiment of truth, time, and timeless art. And this right here is what it sounds like when nobody listened, but he spoke anyway. Please welcome New Orleans raised, boundary breaking, storytelling, lyric living, Kevin Cooks.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
ma'am. That was beautiful.
Yes, sir. We give flowers.
Look, I never heard anybody like,
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yes, and I never heard anybody like actually no, I'm sorry for cutting you off. I think we have a little delay.
Mm-hmm.
I never had anyone to actually like I could have written that myself. That's the way it felt like. So I was like, I'm in debt for that. I really appreciate the fact that you would even take time to even listen to even understand that part. So everything you said was absolutely true. I can't wait to get through the conversation so people can know a little bit more, and we can have a conversation, kicking back how you feel and how I feel about a lot of things in hip hop.
Absolutely. We give flowers here at the Hip Hop Scholar podcast, and this is your opportunity to lecture for us to learn and really unravel this thing called hip hop. So I'm very honored to have you here on the podcast today, sir.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad that you have me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So let's start from the very beginning. The question that I ask all my artists: when did you fall in love with hip hop? When and what was that for you, Kevin Cooks?
I thought about that too because I actually watched a few of your episodes, and I felt it interesting when people are saying when they like absolutely fell in love with hip hop. I don't know when I fell in love with hip hop. My dad was a musician, and so he played like 5 or 6 instruments by the time he passed away. He was a music teacher. He traveled the world a couple of times. It's a lot of memories that I have from being a kid with watching my dad perform at like Jazz Fest in New Orleans. I traveled with him a lot. I was like his little road man. And I just always loved music. And then around the time, I guess, elementary school is when I would listen to music that my cousins would listen to. So my older cousins were my influences. So they were playing like, I remember LL Cool J, Run DMC. I would watch UMTV raps, and I was just like, man, I love the art form, but didn't necessarily want to do it yet. And then around the time when I got in high school, all of my friends started rapping. So I was already into poetry, and I was doing things of that nature since I can remember, since like third or fourth grade. I was already trying to write poems, and it just kind of happened. I was like, man, I'm gonna do that. And then around that moment, I would say probably around 17, 18, I fell in love with the art form. I love the music in general, but I fell in love with the art form of actually putting pen to paper probably around 17, 18 years old. And my influences are like great because coming from New Orleans, we had like locally and then nationwide at some point, Fiend. We had Mystical. We had like I had friends who were rapping who I think are better than people who actually made it. So like Mr. B's from New Orleans is one of my all-time favorites, and that's one of my closest friends. So I would say I always loved music, but I fell in love with the art form probably around 17, 18 years old.
What a very comprehensive question. Shout out the Fiend, talking like I walk it, walking like I talk it. Indeed. And
Yes.
so your familiarity with music was that accompaniment of how everything kind of connected together, being introduced into jazz and traveling with your father. Shout out to your dad, his
Yes.
legacy and his estate. That is your lineage. Is the music part, the producing part of how to get that foundational music, and then the lyrics, placing that together as spoken word. And there's a merge when we think about poetry and with rap that, it's a fine detail, almost like being bilingual. And there's something in the brain that happens when you go from one language to another almost. And then going from poetry to rap and being influenced by the cousins. And then your MTV raps, Tigger in the Basement, BET with Ed Lover and that Dr.
Yeah.
Dre. Those were times, especially when I talk to artists about how when we were growing up in our generation, you didn't have YouTube where you can watch it anytime you wanted to. There was a certain time
Hmm.
that you had to get up and go watch it. And if you were a
Yes.
dedicated fan, that's when you were able to watch it. Interesting.
Absolutely. I remember being little and we had the box. But strangely enough, I loved East Coast music before I loved any. As far as rap goes, I don't know why, but it just always was something about it. It was gritty. It was uh, it was very poetic. And then as I got older, my taste started to change a little bit. So in high school, I remember the two CDs that actually changed my thought process. My dad lived in South Dakota. He had gotten remarried and he lived in South Dakota. So going up there, it was no urban music whatsoever. So when I went up there, I started going up there like the summer after my freshman year. So the only two CDs I had, or two tapes that they were at the time,
Mm-hmm.
I had it was Illmatic by Nas, and I had Southern Playalistic Cadillac, Funky Cadillac Music by Outkast. And that was the only two, that's the only music I listened to for 3 months, like 3 months and some change. And but I would just remember like it resonated with me. And I didn't at the time, like I said, I wasn't even writing yet. And then I was like, man, this is, everything about this is great. Like everything that they're doing, like Outkast made me want to move to Atlanta and made me want to, Andre 3000 made me want to get a herringbone. And it just so happened that I think that, God had it in me to be a writer. And it wasn't as hard as I thought. The only thing that was extremely hard was song structure because I didn't know anything about bars. I didn't know anything how to put this thing together. I literally would just like everything on a paper and like, I write very small and very bad. And so I would have like 2 or 3 pages with one verse. Like I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know anything about control, any of those things. Those kind of came later when I started actually producing. And then I was like, and that was out of necessity because I didn't know how to buy a beat. My friends who were already rapping, they were doing their thing and they weren't going to slow down for me. I was still learning. So I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go buy me a motif. I started buying this and that. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna produce my own. So taking control of that kind of helped me to be able to put this thing together. But the music itself, man, I wake up to music, I go to sleep to music. Like music at all portions of my life has something. Like I don't care if it was a jazz song or my dad was really into guitar, so he would listen to anything with a guitar riff. So, coming up as a kid, I didn't listen to a lot of R&B. It was more like, old school rhythm and blues or anything like Sly and the Family Stone. My daddy listened to Stevie Wonder, like, people like that. Like he performed with Joe Tex. He performed with James Brown. Like my dad was doing all of those things. So my music, my very eclectic, but he did that on purpose. He was like, okay, you can listen because he hated rap at one point. Like he was like, I don't get that. That they're taking everything from this, and then he kind of like understood where it was going. He said, okay, you can have that, but I need you to be able to listen to all of this. And then it kind of like rounded me out. So I think most of the time with the selection of music that I pick, it's not going to be what everybody else wants as far as the like now they're doing all the trap beats and all that. I like the music, I respect it, but not for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I want to unpack all of that. I want to ask you though, do you play any instruments at any point? Did you pick up the guitar or any instruments along the way?
I didn't. My dad tried to give all of us instruments. I was the one that bucked it because I was the athlete. So my whole thing was I'm going to the gym. Like I'm going to I play basketball. So it was like I'm going to practice basketball. And my dad was really like he didn't force anything on us. He was like from religion to music to whatever, he was just like, figure that out. And then he always encouraged. And he wanted me to play the guitar, but as a kid I sang. So I was in the choirs and like in high school I was in the choir. In eighth grade, I was in the choir as well. I was lead singing in the choir in eighth grade before my voice changed. So I was always a second tenor as far as I can remember. So I went from that to like a bass baritone. I remember it was like, what was out at the time? It was Boys the Men and the Coolie Highs and all of that was out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard to say goodbye. And I remember singing it and it's a note that I always could hit. And when I went to hit it, it like cracked. And that pretty much was the end of that because I was like, oh no, like my voice is different. So music was always there, but it was singing at first. So when everybody else was rapping, I was singing, listening to Jodeci and things of that nature. But every time I would put these raps on, I was like, man, I love this. Like Goodie Mob, Outkast, Scarface, Tupac, but Tupac before the Death Row era.
Right.
The revolutionary parts of it, and just those things. So I love that. I was like, man, I want to do that, or I want to be a part of that in some kind of way. I didn't know it was going to be rapping, but I knew at some point I was going to be a part of music in some kind of way.
What a fantastic journey you have explained with your researching all different facets of music. Speaking of Tupac, Tupac, when he was with Digital Underground, he was a dancer before he even picked up the mic. He didn't start off with, being.
Absolutely, and I know that whole verse.
We can go bar for bar, indeed, when it comes to that for sure. Um, we'll say that for another time. I want to focus on you, but it is reminiscent to Tupac's journey
Yes,
on
man.
the research part of all the different music. Much like when you were talking about the Illmatic and the Southern Playalistic Cadillac Funky Music cassette tapes. The first CD that I purchased
Yes.
for myself was
Hmm.
Crucial Conflict, which is a Chicago-based group,
I
and my
remember that too.
being and my being from Louisiana, because again, at some point there were no rappers in Louisiana. Like when No Limit and Cash Money came out in the late '90s. Before that, it was nearly non-existent at a big scale. Yes, you had the New Orleans bounce. You had
Yes.
those types of music that was local, but it wasn't as mainstream. You're not turning on MTV Raps and seeing somebody from Louisiana. You may see UGK, you may see 8 Ball or MJG, and so in those reigns
Right.
at that time frame, we gravitated towards that. But that East Coast and even some West Coast was really part of that musical
Yes.
stance that we gravitated towards if you were somebody that was into hip hop, right? You were, especially as you were saying, you had the cassette tape,
Yes.
and then traveling, and then even the lesser known unreleased artists being friends of yours. You have really encompassed and have a comprehensive view, a very interesting and intricate view of what it takes to be in the music lane. And so I'm very interested in really unpacking like your process and your thinking when it comes to creating hip hop music. So I want to ask you something. I got some questions ready for you.
Uh-huh.
And so let's talk about that.
Okay.
The nobody listened. It feels like a confession as well as a
Okay.
declaration. So when you were crafting that project, who did you want to listen to that particular project, and who did you already know wouldn't listen to it?
Great questions. So when I did that project, as I said, with me starting to produce, when I put that out onto DSPs, that music had been sitting in my laptop for years. Like that music was probably produced and written and recorded in 2003, 2004. Uh, at the time, and I said this on the art project, when I was doing what I was doing, everybody in New Orleans was bouncing. So it wasn't really a lot. Like my friends weren't bouncing, but the local scene was bounce music. And I remember going. I had a rap partner at the time, and God bless his soul, but he wound up passing away. He committed suicide, and his name was Orlandis Banks. His brother is Alfred Banks, and he's a very popular, extremely popular artist from New Orleans at this point. But anyway, so Orlandis and I was on just a different wave, and so when I was doing that music, it was just being myself. I just felt like if you listen to it, it's really just me venting. I literally just got everything out like for a long time. Like that was my poetry style. Like the one thing that I identified with Tupac was that it was more of it wasn't very imaginative in the sense of he wasn't making up stories. Like he was going through things, and as he processes, he writes, from what he saw, and that was the way that I took it. And I didn't sit down and have a thought to do it. It just naturally came out that way. So I feel better when I'm pouring out and venting, or as they say, that's my therapy. Like I'm getting it off my chest. And that's what I was doing around that time. So I had people around me, and we were putting out mixtapes. And right before Katrina, I had an extremely popular mixtape in New Orleans. And then Katrina came, and then everybody moved around,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of stopped it. But I didn't care. I was like, man, I'm going to do the music that I like. And I felt like it was a lane for it, but at the time I wasn't strong enough to keep doing that because I felt like it got to the point where I was like, man, nobody's listening. And that's why I named that title of that, Nobody's Listening, because I felt like at the time nobody from New Orleans was listening. Like I would go to these labels with me and my rap partner, and we would freestyle for hours, and they put on their beats. And I remember being at one record label, and it was in Gentilly, and they were like their artists were there, and they were like, okay, what y'all got? And so we just started freestyling and going, and then these guys was like calling people on the phones. Their artists was coming in, and they were big mad because these guys had money and they wanted to put the money behind us, but they kept telling us like, we don't know what to do with y'all. Like we don't have a market for y'all here. Like we're gonna have to bring y'all to New York. You got to get away from here. And I was like, man, I'm from New Orleans. Like, why I got to go all the way out there in order for them to understand what I'm doing here? Like, it should be a piece of something here. And so I really didn't have a target audience in mind. I just felt like if I'm myself, somebody's gonna feel it. Because I always felt like I was destined to have people hear my music. So I didn't have to really dance around that. I mean, life happens at times, so you kind of like fall off your path. But eventually, if it's a God-given path or universal, whatever people call it, it's going to bring you back. And so I always stayed creating music, but I never really felt like I wanted to give a particular sound to a particular person. So I just wanted to, I wanted people to hear me but it also created an insecurity at a point because my music was so honest and so real that I felt like if they didn't like the music, they didn't like me because all of that is real stuff. I never lied about anything that happens in the music.
Yeah. And like Erica Badu say, you're sensitive about your shit. Like before you allow for anybody to try to change
Absolutely.
and move it around and everything. I mean, the essence of being TRU,
Yeah.
especially to where you're from, and taking that leap of faith to say, no, I'm gonna stay where my roots are and make that clear and make that name. That's where I have those conversations with artists about what does it mean to make it. What does making it look like? And
Right.
when you were speaking, it wasn't really about this money or this popularity. It was about staying true to who you are and where
Nah.
you're from. Yeah, like the essence of TRU for
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. Yes. You know, like I said, with music for me was always just something that I love. So it's like it was never a money focus. But that also at the time was a battle because that's pretty much that was my dad's mind frame, right? So he was always like, just create the music. He loved the music. He would be on his guitar for hours and like to his fingers cramp and like just putting so much time into the craft. And I would watch that. And he really wasn't focused upon money until he got older. And then he was like, dang, I wish I would have did this a little bit different. So around the time when I should have been trying to be a starving artist, I was going to college and I was working and then, just being a young man, like learning on my own. My dad wasn't in New Orleans, so I was pretty much doing whatever I wanted to do. And it was like that for a long time. So, you're just out here, your focus was different. And so my focus was on money. Like I need to make money. So music kind of took a back seat at a point. But now as an adult male and as a father myself, I wish I would have continued to just push the issue with the dream because I felt like at that time it was so much momentum and steam that it could have really done something special. But even with that, I just wanted to make my mama some money. I wanted to be able to take care of my mom and my sisters. Like I always had the clothes I wanted. Like I'm not really a materialistic person. So most of the things that I want or wanted, I have. And I've always made sure that I have because I've always hustled. So I've always had a job. I always did whatever I had to do to make money. So music for me was just going to music. And like I saw a future in it, but it was more like I'm gonna do it my way. I wouldn't let anybody pressure me. And even with the people around me, sometimes I would let them hear songs and they'd be like, I don't know, Kev. And I'm like, bro, I'm telling you because it wasn't the landscape of what was going on at the time. Then they double back and be like, Kev, I was listening to that song. Man, that song fire. And I was like, bro, I've been trying to tell y'all that for a minute. Like, y'all not listening to me. Like your ears and my ears are different. Like I'm doing something for my spirit. You're just telling me what you like.
Which is tuned in to what's trending probably more than anything. And then so
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so I also have to interject and say that, the legacy in which your father has built, I mean, he truly was a rich man because here you are, a full adult, a
Yeah.
father, and a breadwinner. And every bit of you, every question, every message that you have shared and what you said has had your father echoed in every piece of that. So it may not have been the monetary money, but it really sounds like your father did make it and was very rich because his legacy has last and is long lasting. Because you talk like you were just on tour with him, like you can remember those things. The memories are fresh, and it's resonating in
Yeah.
everything that you do. So even with you, your mom and your sisters and your family and everybody, it may not be the monetary gains of, making it in that way, but you're making this foundation. You have this legacy, especially like you're saying, being a starving artist versus going to college. I mean, going to college is a whole different type of hustle and
Yeah.
different mentality. So you took the road less
Yes.
traveled to make certain that you could take care of your own family. Not to take anything away from that, yet you're coming right back to where you started from. You're right back in the music, you and having that resilience to be able to say, I'm gonna hold on to it. So you in your music, you often do merge reflection with resilience. So how do you translate pain into sound
Yes.
without letting it consume the message? Right? Because you when your lyrics speak it in and Art and Reality is Timeless. That was the first song I heard of yours, and it was like, man, this is super special for sure. Um, so how do you make certain
Thank
that
you.
you are very welcome? How do you make certain that that pain, that drive, um, doesn't overwhelm the message in your music? That you're able to entertain and teach while still getting that therapy going through the music. How do you balance that?
I've never even thought about it like that, to be honest, because like the way that I do music, uh, I'll sit with a beat, right? So I'll hear it and then I listen to it, and then whatever it tells me to write, I write it. And so I've heard people say, "Man, I wrote 100 songs for this project." I really don't do that. I pretty much one take the thing. I'm like, I just if the beat wants me to make a love song, then we do that. If the song wants me to pour something out about this, we do that. The only thing that I did do when I was going to college, I actually took a lot of writing courses. So I took creative writing, I took poetry and with poetry and novels, short stories and drama. I took a lot of English courses, but I literally took those English courses to be able to write better.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to Delgado Junior College in New Orleans at the time, and I had a professor, and I forgot his name, but he was very instrumental in what I was writing because I remember writing a paper and he was like, Kev, come here. He was like, man, you wrote that out of your memory, right? And I was like, yeah, why? I was like, I did all of the words, I did everything, I checked it, the spell check. He was like, because you're writing like you talk. He was like, you're gonna have to figure that out. And he was like, you need to doodle or write down these things. And he showed me like how to structure things before I start writing. So now it's just engraved into my writing process. So now if I sit down and start thinking about something, I literally picture the lyrics. So if I'm writing about, I don't know if you heard this song or not, but I have a song called "I Got Issues," which is one of my favorite songs. But I literally put everything into that song on purpose because I felt like in that capsule, I was never going to talk about that again in my personal life. Not saying I wouldn't address it if someone asked me questions, but I was like, I didn't want to just like, how you have some people that just constantly the Debbie Downer. I was like, well, let me get this out. It was part of the therapy process, and let me figure that out. So if it entertains you, it entertains you. If it doesn't entertain you, I feel like some of these things will resonate with someone. And like you said, like when you're touching things about love, you're touching things about finances, you're touching things about family, someone somewhere is always going through something that's in those categories. And so when I write, I'm like, I never think about attracting a listener. I'm more like, okay, this is my testimony, and someone is going to hear this, and actually, it's going to resonate with them. And if it's one, that's fine. If it's 1,000, that's fine. But I just want to make good music. I want to make music that I'm proud of, and music that I can say, like in art, everything is art. No matter if I like it or you like it, I might not like Picasso, and you may think that someone else is the greatest, and that's fine. But the art that I make, I want to be proud of my own art. I want to, when I listen back to myself, say, okay, I like that. That is good. Like I can say my kids can listen to that, and not in a way like because it's not on a cussing level or anything like that. Because I pretty much look at music the same way that we look at movies. But for what I want to put out, I just make music that I like. And if anyone happens to like it, that's perfect. But at this point, I'm not under the constraints of music paying my mortgage. I pay my own mortgage, so I get to do whatever I want to do with my music. And if anyone likes it, I really want people to like it, but it's not actually paying the bill, so I don't have to do what you like me to do. I can just do what I want to do. I own my own record label, so anything that I do is what I want to do, and so I encourage everyone to do that.
I know that's right. Well said. Absolutely wise in what you just said. Shout out to your English professor. I too am an English professor myself out here in Texas. And when you were talking about
Oh,
all of those different things about the writing and channeling that writing, your professor, shout out to Delgado. Yeah, shout out to Delgado College out in New Orleans. Um,
no,
he was really
yes,
focusing on making you realize that this thing called metacognition, where you are thinking about your thinking and really going into this depth of your thought process and then going into another spectrum of thinking about that level. So it was really interesting and insightful when you said that you're not the type where you're just writing music and writing lyrics. You have to be haunted almost to a beat, and the beat tells you through the lyrics.
yes,
So your it's a bit neurodivergent almost, where you are able to see words and sounds and be influenced by your expressions connected to this beat that essentially haunts you until you actually do and yield to what it tells you to do. And that is a very insightful way with
Yes.
creating music, where you're not yielding for the audience, you're yielding for what the music tells you to do. And that's been, that it's almost like a spiritual thing for you, even, right? Where it's just a spiritual upliftment where
Yes.
you're able to just showcase and share out when it comes to music. But most artists, and a lot of artists, they take the time to write, and they do all of this writing. And when I ask them, what does it take for you? What's your writing process? Is it a mood? Is it a color? Is it the beat? And, you're one of the first to say it's all three. Like it's something so intangible
Yes.
you can't touch, that it's in this spectrum, and then it manifests itself, and that's how you create music. That's very insightful and profound, and I definitely want to unpack that more. Um, when because I want to talk about this song though too. Art and Reality is Timeless. That song there really is amazing. I've listened to that over and over again. And so, because it sounds more like a thesis statement on legacy, that particular song. So, defining this word
Yes.
timeless, what does timeless mean to you in your world? More than, most people, they're scrolling, doom scrolling. But to you, when you think of the word timeless, what does that word mean to you, especially in relation to your naming of that song?
All right. I remember a long story short, but me and my brother were talking about music at one point, and then, like, they always have this is a classic album. This is a classic album. So to me, classic albums, timeless music, what that means to me is that in any era that you pull that out, it still has weight. It still makes you feel something. It still goes. Like, so if like when I was young, or let's say now, I may go listen to Sam Cooke. I might listen to Donny Hathaway. Those are artists that I really, really love. And that's not the typical music that someone would really love, because some of their music is very slow and very, like, thoughtful. One of my favorite pieces of work ever was Hear My Dear by Marvin Gaye.
Mm.
And remember, he made that, and it was supposed to be junk. Like, he was literally throwing it in the face of his ex-wife, like, here, take all of the proceeds from this, but I'm gonna make the worst album that I could possibly make. And it wound up to me being a classic because I understood what he was saying. I felt the pain in the lyrics. So timeless to me just means that no matter when I pull it back out, it's still going to be the same. It may not be the same sonically as far as the types of beats that's going on now, but the love for that music is not changed. And when you look at art, art is always, unfortunately, greater when a person passes away. They become the greatest painter, the greatest musician, always after their life. So that music will live on as part of your legacy. It will live on longer than you. As long as they're able to play it back, it can live that way. And that's what I mean by timeless. Like, and also timeless in the sense of, you don't have to start when you're 12. Like, you didn't have to be a child prodigy. Like, you could have started this thing when you were 19, 20, 25, and been really good at it because it was your blessing. It was the thing that God had for you to be able to do very well. So you don't have a time frame on it. There's no time limit on art. Like, you can write, you can create, you can be intelligent until your brain doesn't function anymore. You can only play basketball for so long. You can only play football for so long. But you can write until your fingers don't move. And then at that point, you can dictate and let someone else write for you, and you can just tell them what you're thinking. So to me, that's what I mean about the artist. No time, time doesn't exist. There's no rush to make it, and there's no end of it. It's always going to live. So it'll live on forever. Somebody's going to hear it. Somebody's going to pull it back. If you listen to a lot of the new music, they're sampling again. So they're going back and they're sampling from the 99 and 2000s.
Right.
Whereas when I was young, they were sampling from the 70s and 80s and things of that nature. So, it's always interesting listening to music because I'm like, man, this thing, it lasts. Like, I can put on Between the Sheets by the Isley Brothers and it lasted. I can put on, some Whitney Houston songs now or whatever you're going to listen to. Santana. I used to listen to Santana with my dad. I put on Black Magic Woman. That lasts now. Like there's people who can't duplicate that sound now. So that's what I mean. It's no time constraints. You can do it when you're young, or God can bring you back to it, and it still exists. And that's what I mean by the timeless part of it.
Oh, such a good answer. Such a great answer, Kevin. Thank you for that. That's a great answer. Because yes, art, music, and when you were talking, it's like you're not just listening to music, like you are music, like you become merged, and even through this osmosis process, like it's scientifical to you. It's a very stem way in which you're counting, and you're thinking of expressions as you're listening to music. So it's never like a beat 1 2 1 2. You're like heartbeat and
No,
breathing when it comes to music.
yes,
That's so dope. So dope.
absolutely. Like I like to sit with the music, man. I like when I sit, we can listen to some of the songs that I may listen to may not have intended to be like soul touching, right?
Hmm.
So someone can do something and like the beat can be very somber and very slow. But in my mind, I'm like, man, did you hear that? Like, did you hear what he said? Like, did you see? Like, can you feel that? Like, I rewind it. My wife never gets it because she's like, I don't know. Like, my wife is still like, she loves music, but in a way of the listener of if the beat makes her, do that, she loves that. With me, I'm like, I can hear past the beat. It doesn't have to be, the latest producer. Like I can hear the words and then I can see what they're trying to do. So I always find some beauty in everything, like when it comes down to music. I may not see the beauty in everything outside of that, but in that recording space, in that studio space, I can see everything in there. Like even after Katrina, we're city to city. And so I was between New Orleans, Houston, and Atlanta. But like when I would go to Atlanta, I was recording 8 hours a day, sometimes 5 days a week, and I'm making the beats, I'm making the hooks. I got a couple of artists that I'm working with. I'm going to Stankonia Studios. I'm going to these other studios, but I'm really just like in a creative space to where I'm going. Most people were sitting down. They were like depressed or like, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And I'm like, shoot, God gave me a space now. Like I'm out here. I'm going to see what this is going to do. Like I'm traveling. I'm trying to figure this thing out. And music didn't like, I mean, not music, but life doesn't necessarily make me just stop being able to do music. Usually when my back is against the wall is when I'm more creative because the things I'm not able to say in person, I can get that out, and then I can create this thing. And that's generally how I like to make music. I just like to go feel it. And like I usually don't even write outside of the studio. I literally, and which frustrates some people because they like to have a thing before they go to the studio. I'm like, I don't need a thing. Just book the studio session and have some beats, and we're gonna figure it out. And it's not many people that I've worked with that are actually like that. One of the person who did the art project with me, his name is Bishop. He's like that. Like, he can get real creative real fast and very good with melodies. So like we work well together. One of my other friends in New Orleans, his name is Jared. He owns Do You Clothing. He was another one that I can say he may not write as fast as me, but he can go in there and he can hear it, And so I think my blessing is just being able to be able to put the pen to paper. And like I just give me a little time to sit with the beat. It don't need to be an hour. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 10 seconds. It could be as soon as you put it on, I'm like, oh, I like that. And if I like it, I can hear it. And then once I hear it, it starts moving. And so that's just all part of the process. Like I just love that creative thing. I can do this for hours and like even just helping someone else and like writing stuff and like, just being in that space is like my church, so to speak, and not being sacrilegious or anything of that nature, but it's my peace. So no matter what's going on outside of that space, when I go there, that's over with. Like I don't think about nothing outside of there. I'm not checking my phone. I've done whole mixtapes on a cell phone. Like literally go. I did a mixtape when I came here, and it's called Mr. October, and I did it in 2010.
Okay.
Uh, it was on one of the sites the sites that they got rid of. But I literally wrote that whole project on a BlackBerry, and I never heard any of the beats. I literally went to the studio with a guy out of Austin named Rapid Rick, DJ Rapid Rick. He's done regionally. He's very famous, but he would just put on a beat, and I'm like, okay, let's go. Like I didn't want any prior knowledge of the beat. Just put that on and let's see what we're gonna do to it. And it wound up being a very, very good project. But that's the way I just like to do it. Just let me sit with it. Let me see what it tells me. Let me see if it makes me feel anything. If it doesn't make me feel anything, I'm not gonna write on it. Like I don't want to force anything. Like, I've actually made beats that was supposed to be mine and giving them away because I'm like, I don't really feel it. Like I ain't feeling me on it. Like I think it's a good beat, but you can have it, and let's see what you can do with it. But music to me is how we did food in New Orleans. Like everybody gets to eat. Like you hungry? Yeah, here, take that. Like I'm not hoarding it. Like if you want some, take some. Like it's food and alcohol at everything, and that's how I do the music. Like if we're around each other, I'm sharing that. Like you need that, take that. Like if that's gonna be good for you, do this. Man, I visioned this for you. When I was writing this, I thought this would be good for you. Like, can you put a hook on this? Like it's very communal with me. And then, as far as what's gonna hit, we never know. That's up to the people. But if you're chasing stardom, I don't really think you're stepping with the right foot forward in the first place.
Man, that was a bar right there. Wow. The whole thing you just stated. I mean, I would love to hear you lecture and to be part of like a hip hop class and talking about this because it's such a wise perspective in what you're saying. When you were talking as well, I was thinking about this article by Ron Eglash that I've been marinating on about computational neuroscience in hip hop. And I wonder, like an
Hmm.
MRI of your brain whenever you are in the studio, what would that look like? I think the neurons, I think it would be firing like, something phenomenal because the way that you speak of it and explain the process, yet, it takes a visionary to really look at it visually. Like I'm a visual learner, so everything you're saying, it's like I can visually see your take of the beat and visually seeing the beat. And like you said, whatever you see for yourself,
Right.
literally with the sound, you're looking at the sound and you take it for yourself, or you can hear somebody else's and use your eyes and literally see that that would be best for them. So your brain is immaculate. Like it's truly neuroscience when it comes to how you are creating this music for everybody, right? You're making different dishes, a gumbo, a etouffee, sauce coubon. Like you're making all these
Right.
different dishes going around for
Yeah.
everybody to consume in a delicious way. Because New Orleans food, Louisiana food, that is a whole different type of cultural, communal
Absolutely.
type of approach when it comes to food, and you're doing that with music in a phenomenal way. And so again, when Eglass talks about computational neuroscience, it's where you're using your brain, the brain capacity to absorb the beat. And when you were talking as well, I was thinking about this. It's a cartoon movie, How to Train a Dragon, and my son watches it sometimes. But
I
essentially,
watched it.
so that's what you do with the music. So instead of trying to conquer these dragons, you are listening to their heart. Like you are merging this together where you can control the dragons by love, by listening, by feeling. And that is just an amazing thing. So again, unpacking this thing called hip hop with you, it is very intricate in the nuances of the details in which you approach it. So, I appreciate it. I'm actively listening to everything, and it's
Thank
just
you. Thank you.
really profound how you explain it and how you're putting this together, and you know it, right? So, I need to ask you, like, as far as like writing a
Right.
book, or have you thought about a biography for yourself and writing about these things? Because that is a book that I would love to read and understand more about your process when it comes to music. Maybe that's not something you do now, but in the future, I mean, is that a consideration? Seriously.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Funny that you would say that because when I said to my partner who passed away, um, we always, first of all, we had a group and we named our group the Apostles, right? And it was my grandmother probably would have lost her mind, but we didn't curse at all. We were like, we're not going to curse. We're going to make sure that we're able to use words because we got to that point where we were like, if you're cursing, you don't have another word. You can replace that with something else, right? So me and him were both like, and I said it on the art, and in reality, it's timeless. Like I wanted to do books. We wanted to do screenplays. We had all of these things planned, and then life kind of like moved and took us in different directions. But long story short, absolutely. Like I definitely would. I love being around creatives, and Houston hasn't been that great for me in the space of creativity. And when I say that, I don't have anything against Houston. I think Houston's a great city. I just think that sometimes God nudges you in different directions. And I already have a vision of where I think I should be. And I think at that point, I'll be able to do those things because I will be around creatives that can help me put those things together. I've always been better with the ideas and the concepts rather than the actual putting these things together. Like even in my relationship and my marriage, I am very good at we should do this, we should try to do this. But if we want like the process to be taken care of, I hand that off to my wife. I'm like, because she's very good at like putting these things in a space. Okay, we need to do this first. This has to happen. This has to happen. I'm the creative. But yes, I would love to do books. I mean, that was partly the reason why I took those English classes, and they were out of my degree. Like it wasn't like I was taking these classes and I needed them for this. After I took 2 English classes, I was done. I wound up taking 5. So I'm taking all of these English courses with the thought process the same way that I got my degree. My degree is in business, but I didn't get my degree to work for people. I got my degree to better my business because I was like, I know I'm going to be in this music business and I want to be able to market this. I want to be able to sell this. So those English classes for me were like, okay, when it's time for me to write this book, these things are going to help me with this. The short stories and novels is going to help me write screenplays and dramas and stuff like that. And like, so yes, I would love to be in a space to where someone is helping me to get these ideas and take these concepts and put them into it. I would even love to use the music and actually make short films out of some of the songs. I think some of them are so vivid, even like the I Got Issues. I think that is so vivid to whereas I can envision how I want that to act out and how I want someone to look and what I want their facial expressions to be by that song. So I would love to put it in a book form, even if it's an audio or visual book. Like it doesn't matter. Like, times are changing as far as the way that people consume, but I would love to do that. And, I think that would be heaven on earth for me to be able to be in a space to where I can get off all of my creative endeavors and like whether it sold 100 million copies or not, just to be able to do it, I think it would be interesting. Even having like forums and having conversations about hip hop or music in general is just something that I'm definitely into.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that because some future projects I have coming up, I definitely need a mind like yours to create those things in such a multimodal way. So my studies is in the digital humanities, right? So researching and textbooks, and then
Okay.
even the dominant narratives, right? British American literature and all those different things. The tides are changing now, right? And so
Yes.
one of the guests I just spoke with,
Yes.
he connected Little Wayne to Edgar Allan Poe. And so imagine a curriculum of
I
being
saw that.
able to teach hip hop in the same way in which we have been taught Edgar Allan Poe or all these other British American literature. And that is the goal of mine, is to create this curriculum, this pedagogy even, when it comes to using hip hop, because it gives these layers, it gives this confidence and these messages through the music. And I want to tell you this, though, Kevin Cooks, no more long story short. Tell the long story. The people that gonna listen to it, they hear
Absolutely.
every bit of it. So no more long story shorts. You say the full message, and then there's so many different ways that you can do so. I wonder as well, when you were in college and you were taking those English classes, like your type of writing, are you more of a digital typewriter or are you more of a pen and paper typewriter? Which do you prefer?
Well, back then it was absolutely pen and paper. I've gotten pretty digital now, but I've gotten back to actually using notebook and paper because, like I said, I was doing so much music in my phones. I got out of that, and then I went back to it because I felt like I'm a lot more vivid when I can see it and write it down on that piece of paper. Like it's just something about that paper and those lines. It helps me to do something different, and I feel like some of my best writings have been actually writing. So I would love to write it out. I mean, I'm sure it would take longer in that way, but I definitely think I'm more of a pen to paper person.
So then let me ask you this. Are you writing in print? Are you writing in cursive? Is it a mixture of the two? Like, are you changing your writing styles based on the music? Like, what does your actual penmanship look like? And then on top of that, I also want to ask, are you doing white paper? Are you using the lawyer pads, those yellow tablets? Like, what does that writing process look like to you?
I've written on anything that I can get my hands on because I'm always busy doing something. The phone for a long time was good because I can speak to the notes, but I'll grab a napkin. I have the law notebooks. I've written songs on those. I want to say the art project was pretty much in that. It was pretty much on the law ones. But I've written on everything. My handwriting is very bad, partly because when I was little, I was lefty. And I grew up around a lot of older folks, and they felt like being lefty was awkward. So they
Mm-hmm.
taught me to use my right hand. So in sport, especially basketball, because you got to use both hands, it was always amazing to people because I was little and I can use both hands. But pretty much the left hand is more steady. So that's the way to do it. But I write with my right hand, so my handwriting can be crazy. And like if you look at it, I'm pretty sure somebody can study my handwriting and be like, oh my God, his brain is all over the place, which it may be, but it looks like it's going between cursive and print pretty much the entire time that I'm writing. I know everything that I'm saying, but I'm sure if someone else read it, they'd be like, what? Like what is he saying? So yeah, it'll confuse anyone else, but it's pretty much between cursive and print in certain letters and depending on the word or like I guess how I'm feeling when I'm writing that part of it,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be different. But
Yeah, it's
definitely
how
pen
you.
to paper,
Yeah,
definitely more of a writer.
it is how you're feeling. Your brain is moving faster than your hand can gather. Right, that's what's happening. Whenever I have
Absolutely.
students that are writing, the worst handwriting, and most doctors, right, medical doctors even have the most terrible penmanship because there's so much going on in the brain. There's so much problem and solution and trying and puzzles and trying to figure things out that your hand is designed to only write one thing at a time. And I wonder if you were to grab two pens, two pencils at the same time and write, even if they're mirror opposites or backwards. I'm wondering, like, I'd love to experiment and see you write in a way and practice your writing just to reveal that to yourself. Because again, I know exactly what you're saying. Starting off as a left-handed, but your teachers and everybody made you do right hand because left is awkward. But anybody who's a lefty, though, that is another part of the brain, though, that is being accessed, and you were still able to do so
Yes.
with sports. And in music, it came much
Yes.
easier to you because you were immersed in it. And I wonder also, back to your father, was he left-handed, right-handed, or was he ambidextrous as he was playing the guitar and these other instruments? Um, and I wonder if that's the reason too why you never did get into instruments, because your brain is just moving so fast. You could probably play two instruments at the same time. Like, I literally feel like this neuroscience type from this article, like, you would be the specimen that he would study, because putting you in these situations, I wonder how you would fare, especially when you're not thinking about it. Right now, thinking about it, oh no, you probably be a little awkward, but in a natural state, like in a studio, like you said, placing you in a studio situation and
All
having you
right.
in a comfort zone, I wonder how you would fare there. Like, you are definitely a specimen for
I
experimentation.
would love I would
Yeah.
and I would love to have that. Like to be honest, like I'm so much into a phase of I'm very inquisitive by nature and like I love to learn.
Mhm.
Not necessarily love being in classrooms. So that's pretty much why I haven't got my master's at this point. But I do love learning, and like especially now, I'm in this thing about learning about myself, and like just figuring these things out. Like I started doing ancestry.com, just figuring out like family. So anything that could help me be a better version of myself. Like I want to be a better version of me, so I can be better a version of me for them and for myself. So anything that can help me unlock another level, I would love to do things like that. Like I'm very interested in how the brain functions and how how we're able to. to continue to do these things, even though this outside sources are basically stomping it out. Like, all of the stresses that we have in a day or the things that we have to do in a life, and then still being able to create this art or to separate yourself from what you're doing outside of that. I think that's always an interesting thing. And the brain is so, you know, the brain is amazing, and the capabilities of it is probably like, we only use a certain percentage of our brain. If someone can help me unlock the rest of that, I've always done well in school, but I definitely realized as an adult, I have a problem with concentration, like extreme, unless I'm doing music. When I'm doing music, I don't even have to worry. Like I'll forget that I'm there 8 hours. When I'm doing other things, it's like my brain is moving in so many different ways. Even my sleep patterns are different because my brain is always functioning. Like I've gotten out of my sleep to write songs. I literally be in the bed, knocked out. I'm dreaming of a song and then get up and then write that song. And then and that starts it out. I got my son's name out of a dream. I woke up and went to the Bible and opened the Bible and right in that part. I don't know how I got to it, but my son's name was in that part of the Bible. And I named my second born. I named him that name. And so, my brain is always in hyper mode. So everything you said, I was like, dang, like she actually know. I've never heard anyone put it in word, but that's how I feel. Like my brain literally never stops moving. The only time that I can contain it is when I'm writing, because it's almost like it makes me concentrate. And like for a moment, it shuts off. These things are shut off, and like I can do that, and like I can hyper focus on music. Anything outside of that is gonna be a stretch. Which is why I say, I need that yin and yang around me, someone to help contain all of these thoughts and these ideas, because I'm not very eccentric as far as I'm not a risk taker I don't like speed, like I'm not that type of person, but I do love like the creating thing. Like what I read yesterday is going to be on my brain while something I just heard just now, and it's like my brain is bouncing from place to place looking at all of these different things. And even the way that you said the neurodivergent part of like making music, I never even thought of it like that. It's like almost like a beautiful spotless mind, or the butterfly effect, so to speak, where your brain is functioning in different capacity than everybody else understands. And but I have realized as being older that it's okay, because for a lot of times it's like they make you have to do something that you don't love, and like maybe your spirit is just not in love with doing that, and it's happier when you're at peace with doing what you're doing. So as I've gotten older, I've understood that, and like I would love to be a part of things. It just seems fun to me. That's the inner nerd that I have, though.
Yeah, absolutely. To add to what you were saying, most people don't access those parts of the brains, but no, I know your brain does. But you have to learn how to harness it, right? I've talked about this to different artists where, it's actually having a superpower, like being a superhero. And you're unlocking that potential and that power and then being able to use it. And so like the X-Men, you're an X-Man because your brain has
Yeah.
the capability of being able to go in all of these different neurons and phases and, in and out of sleep. You're in REM sleep dreaming, and then all of a sudden you awaken with the answer. That is something that is profound, and that is such a huge part of how neuroscience is trying to target. Like you'll never have Alzheimer's or dementia. You're the type where you'll never have that because your brain, it will not slow down. Matter of fact, if
Prayerfully.
you're getting older, it's actually becoming faster, and you're able to really harness it a bit better now that you're a
Yeah.
little older. Um, and so really encapsulating that. And I wonder a lot of different things. Like I got all these questions, but now I got even more questions to ask you about, unpacking those pieces. Yeah, like these questions are basic compared to what you're sharing and how you think. And so that, again, that metacognition that you have, that you are still learning about. Like it's such a special gift. And then shout out to Mrs. Cooks for being that support system that can handle that can be that not a buffer, but like she is the neck that turns the head. You're the head of the house, but she is the neck that turns the head. And you can't do anything without the neck, and that's what
Absolutely.
she is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So it's a blessing too to
Yeah.
have that type of a spouse, and especially to
Yes.
support you in the music, and you're being able to support your family, your immediate family, your mothers and your sisters, and there's still room, there's still time for it to manifest in such an amazing way. As I say with most of my artists, and
I appreciate that.
I gotta, yes, you are more than welcome. Like, please continue what you're doing. The world needs minds like yours, especially when it comes to hip hop and music altogether, because your musical capability, you can write music for any genre. I bet if you were to learn Japanese,
Yeah.
you could write Japanese rap, right? And R&B if it came down to it, because you're a
Yeah.
singer too. Right? I wonder, do you know
I
any
have.
other languages or?
Yeah. I don't know any other languages, which is funny because I've always wanted to try one. At one point I was like super wanting to do Mandarin, like I wanted to get into that, but it was more for business because I saw where the business was starting to be international, and I was like, oh, I can do this international business thing. But languages are something that just like are very like I'm curious about them, like wondering like how does it change and like the feeling and interpretation are different. Like the way that we say things are different. So yes, I love anything like I said, anything that's going to challenge me mentally. I'm very much into that. Like I love conversation. I love my wife says debate. I don't love arguing, but I love to hear how you think. Like I want to sit down and talk about it. Like I want to know somebody from the basic parts of their being. And I think music is a way to share that. And when you're being honest in your music, I think that people can get a whiff of who you actually are. So anyone listening to my music, I think they would get the same peak that they would get if they met me. Like I try to have integrity at all times and putting that into the music. I'm sensitive in certain ways. I love who I love and I love deeply, and if you love long enough and you live long enough, you lose. So, I try to put all of those things into the music, and hopefully uh the the people can hear that, because I would want them to say, okay, when I met him, he was the same way that he was in that song. Like I really like that song, and that guy, I could see him making that song because he wasn't different. Like it wasn't make believe. I don't cosplay myself. I try to be who I am at all times. I love people. I love humanity. I try to be as good to everyone as I can be. I'm very protective
Mhm.
of the people that I do love, and that's in any way that it needs to be. If it's a conversation to be had. But I'm also more mature now to the point where I realize that conversations are necessary. We learn a lot more when we listen
Mhm.
than when you're younger, you're more rambunctious and you just ready to run your face into a wall. As you get older, you're like, okay, well, why do you think that way?
Mhm.
And I'm hopefully that thought process reflects in my music and continuously reflects in my music. But sometimes I want to write dumb stuff too, though. I want to get in there and just write something that I'm not even thinking about, that's like super stupid and just me playing and getting it out. But generally, it doesn't come out that way. It's usually like I can listen to that, but it doesn't make me want to create it. It'll just make me want to. I'm still going to be myself and do me. Like, I'm still listening to Nas, or like now, my oldest son is 17, and he really likes the back end baby. What's his name? No Cap. He loves the rapper No Cap out of Alabama. I think he's out of Alabama or Mississippi. I think it's Alabama.
Okay.
And I think this guy is super talented. Like I'm not gonna lie, I listened to his music and I was like, he's hiding punchlines. Like, oh my goodness, like he's a young boy that's really, really nice. But that's the music that my son is in. So I can listen to that and be like, oh, and then I can pop in 8 Ball MJG or Outkast, and pretend like I'm still 17, 18 years old. But that's how I want people to listen to my music. Like pull it back out and then hear something that they didn't hear. Because to me, that's the most special feeling when I re-listen to something and be like, dang, I didn't even know he said that.
Mhm.
Did you catch that? Especially if it's subtle, because the Southern hip hop is a little bit different from New York. New York was like so in your face with the metaphors and similes, and it's like I'm like that. And then the TIs and the Scarfaces, like they put music together in a different way to where you can feel it, and you got to go back and play it and say, man, this guy is really rapping his butt off.
Yeah.
One of my favorite verses ever came from UGK, from Bun on the song called Murder. And Bun B went nuts. Like I'm talking about total scorched earth. It's probably one of the best verses in hip hop that I don't think the world ever heard. Like real people who love Southern music probably heard it, but it's a lot of people that didn't hear that Bun B verse. And I was like, that one Bun B verse put him in another echelon to me because it made me realize what he really could do. He was crafting songs based on what that beat needed and what his era needed. But if he needed to, he can go to that. And to that, to me, that's what makes music special. Like, especially artists, like, can you do this and can you do that? Like, I've written R&B stuff too,
Hmm.
and I actually love doing that because I get to step outside of the. You don't have to be as aggressive, when you're doing the R&B stuff. You can totally just lay down and veg out and just be like smooth and soft. So doing all of those different things and putting all of that out, man, I think that is a beautiful thing when an artist can do all of that. It may not necessarily be for you to be a millionaire. So it goes back to what you said earlier about success. Success looks different for everybody. My success is being able to financially support my family while still being able to do what I love. Um, and my son is getting to the point now where he's about to graduate. And I told him, I said, look, man, pick something that you love that you could do if you didn't get any money. If you didn't make a dollar from it, would you still want to do it? And that's the thing that you should pursue. Because then that way you're gonna put your all into it. Even in the lows, you're gonna still love it enough to continue. Because most of the time, people stop before they reach the destination because what they thought it was gonna look like isn't that. Like they had to instead of pivoting and saying, I wanted to be Jay-Z at one point, but now I can be, whoever's the person that's making a ton of money to take care of their family that nobody really knows. Like the rapper Tech Nine is one of the highest grossing artists in hip hop, and the majority of the young black kids don't even know who he is. And in touring, he's killing them. He's always like one or two in touring in the United States. And he's not a household name, but he's wealthy. So sometimes I think people have to ask themselves, do you want popularity, or do you want to actually be able to continue to lay out your dreams and be able to make a living doing so? I would choose that latter, making a living, being able to do what I want to do. And that's still the goal, to be able to make enough money to say I don't have to work this 9 to 5, and my family wouldn't have to miss a step. That would be that goal for me.
I know that's right. Talking about pivoting like a pro made me think of Chameleonaire, where he used the music to turn around and be a business
Yes.
mogul and be a million, even trillionaire on
Yeah.
top of that. And as you
Yeah.
were talking about your son, my son is 22. And he's been recently listening to
Mm.
Outkast, and he's been introducing me to like Freddie Gibbs and a lot of other artists that we've been talking about. And I know exactly what you mean. Those of us who are true to hip hop, that's exactly what we want to hear. We want to listen to the old school, the new school, and even just enjoy it all. And because there's a passion that is there. And you're very passionate when it comes to
Yes.
music, when it comes to community, right? Music to you is community. It is about togetherness. It is about merging generations and having that connectedness. And so when you brought up that Bun B verse, it reminds me of your Nobody Listened, the dopest verse in Murder, as you
Yeah.
say, and nobody heard it except the real ones. The real ones are there
Yeah.
and will always be
Yes.
there to hear it too. So let me ask you this question. I want to honor your time, but this is going to be my last question. I still have like I didn't even touch a lot of my questions, but I do want to
Well,
ask you this one to honor your time. So
uh,
if your younger self could walk into this room, into this studio right now, what do you think he'd have to say about the man that you've become?
mm, I think my younger self, I think my younger self would be okay with who I am right now. I think my younger self would tell me though, sometimes you have to relax. Like you have to, just let it do what it does. I think by having a lot of responsibilities young, sometimes you don't get to enjoy. So like for instance, when you start doing therapy and unpacking, one of the questions is always, well, what makes you happy? I don't know. Other than what I do sometimes. So, like I remember saying in a therapy session, seeing my family happy, that makes me happy. And they're like, but what if they're not happy? So music is the only thing that continuously makes me happy. Like no matter what's going on, I can crack on a song and do that. So I think my younger self would say, man, keep doing that part, but let's fix this part right here. Like you're okay. Like you don't have to worry about, always being that head. Like sometimes it's okay for you to be, you can be soft. It's all right. You don't have to always be that, I was always the father figure, like even with my friends, I was always so mature, just a lot of stuff. I'm like, man, you gonna do that? Man, why you doing that? So I think my younger self would be proud of me, but my younger self would also be like, relax a little, or at least try to rub off on me in a way that'll help me be like, man, just relax and enjoy it. Like enjoy what you're doing, not just the creation of it, but enjoy the life around that creation.
So now, and that's such a great answer, but now I have to ask the other side of that. What would you tell your younger self? If you could go back
Yes,
in time, what is one thing you would tell your younger self, if you could go back in time and
easy.
share something?
Yes. I would tell my younger self, don't listen to anyone. Do what you wanted to do. Because I tell my son this too, because like I said, my son is about to graduate and he's getting to that point. And I've always had ideas and I've had these things. And it's like, for instance, my mother did the best she could. My dad told me that all parents do the best they can with what they know.
Hmm.
But it's our responsibility as parents to be better than the generation previous to us. So
Right.
if there's things that we need to learn, you learn those things and we pass those on to our kids. But and I hate to make it sound like I'm conceited or cocky or anything, but I know what I know. And it was times where I didn't follow what I knew because I trusted someone else. And then getting older, I realized I missed the boat on that idea or that thing because I didn't stick through it. So I would tell my younger self, go with your move. If you prayed about it, if God put that in your spirit, don't worry about what nobody thinks and do not waver. Like you look it in the face and you go after that. And, don't worry about being broke because if you do that thing, it's going to work out for you. Because, it's almost like the story of God sending someone to rescue someone that's drowning. Like you keep turning down the help and then eventually
Yeah.
you're going to pass away. So I would tell my younger self, man, look, don't worry about what everybody else thinking. You be solid in what you think you know, and win, lose, or draw, you go for that. And even if you don't succeed, you gave it your all, and it's probably going to show you something else that's going to help you be in another part or another position. You may need that lesson in order to go, but you forge your own path, which I always did, but never let anyone knock you off of what your mission is. No woman, no parent, no people. You just continue to do what you know that God put in you.
Such great advice, and for your younger self, for your future self, for everyone. And when I tell you, this has definitely been an insightful conversation, a great interview. This has to be part one. Kevin Cooks, I got to have you back on the podcast. Plus, you have me thinking about some.
I'd love it.
Okay.
I'd love it.
Okay, good, good, good. Because I got some projects in the spring too that I'm thinking about that that you have me thinking now. You definitely have taught me a lot. And this has just been a great interview, a great opportunity to learn, especially when it comes to the feeling of hip hop. Not just hip hop, the music, but the expression, the sensory part of hip hop. You represent that so well, and you were able to explain it
Yes.
in such an insightful way. I appreciate you this evening. And I'm gonna honor your time.
I appreciate you as well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the Hip Hop Scholar Podcast, Hip Hop Scholar family, y'all check out Kevin Cook's music, and you will definitely see him back on the podcast. We are out of here this evening. Peace.
Peace.